The wheels of justice turning quickly in South Korea in the wake of last week's hours-long martial law decree.
Ex-Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun has been formally arrested on insurrection charges and is suspected of instigating President Yoon's fateful decision. Mr. Yoon is also facing multiple criminal investigations and is banned from leaving the country. His governing People Power Party, or PPP, is considering he resign as soon as February. But his removal could come much sooner, that is. The opposition coalition is pressing for a second impeachment vote this week amid reports that some PPP members will defy the party boycott and vote to dismiss Mr. Yoon.
There's no let-up in the public pressure calling for his resignation. Tens of thousands have been rallying almost daily, with yesterday's demonstration drawing a crowd of an estimated 40,000 people. Now, for more on what's next for South Korea, we're joined by Christopher Khatouki, academic and research fellow at the University of New South Wales. Dr. Khatouki, thank you very much for joining us here on Asia First. We know that the opposition-controlled parliament has passed a bill to appoint a special counsel to investigate Yoon as well as military officers, behind the short-lived martial law decree. Help us understand why this special counsel is so important, in particular to the opposition, when a public prosecutor conceivably can carry out the same job?
Right. Well, thanks very much for having me, first of all. So in order to understand that question, I think we really have to understand the unique and immense power which the prosecution office has in South Korea. So unlike many prosecution offices in many other democracies, the prosecution office in Korea has the authority to investigate, to launch investigations at its own will. And it also has a strong connection to the political executive. So President Yoon and the People Power Party's chair actually come from the prosecution office itself. So the inherent tension which opposition lawmakers were grappling with was how to launch an investigation into these misdoings without an impeachment process, which hasn't happened yet. And so Yoon has, in his past, used the prosecution office to harass his political enemies. So there was an inherent tension about how to move forward. So now the best solution that the opposition thought was, in part from impeachment, was this permanent special counsel.
Right.
And the one major difference, unlike other special investigations, is that this cannot be vetoed by the president himself. But again, the president retains the right to appoint the lead investigations into an investigation against himself. So I think this will do little to assuage the opposition. Neither will it do much to calm the public's cry for justice.
Okay. Dr. Khatouki, lawmakers also heard testimony from senior officers on Tuesday. One said that the president, called him directly on that fateful night, asked his special forces troops to drag out lawmakers who are inside the main chamber. Another saying that he was asked whether an army bunker in Seoul had space to detain politicians once martial law was imposed. I'm wondering how damaging is this, of course, for Yoon, that's one, but also for the military, which is obviously a vital institution at the forefront of, national security when it comes to tensions on the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, no doubt that these were astounding revelations and an immense overreach and an uncomfortable tension between the executive office and the military itself. But one thing that is true that we see from these public testimonies that are coming out from senior military officers, as well as the rank and file, is that one thing is true, and that is that this is not the same military which was once before in South Korea, before the democratic transition in 1987. And again, we see an immense tension between the old guard, essentially, who still form the upper echelons of the military, particularly under the Yoon administration, and also the much younger rank and file and lower level officers who have been brought up in the ideals of democracy. So, it's damaging to Yoon. It's damaging to the integrity of the military leadership. But I also think that it's a really important time and really good opportunity for reform, for revitalization for the military, and for the legislature and the government to ensure that the military is properly under firm civilian rule.
Okay. And Doctor, do we understand the ruling PPP is discussing Yoon's potential resignation as early as February and holding a snap election in April or May? How realistic is this plan, the timeline? Do you think the public will accept it?
Generally, I don't think it's realistic at all. So, first of all, it's very clear to see that any modicum of popularity that President Yoon held, which was a very quite small before this insurrection, it was already quite small. And now his popularity is at 17.3% the last time I checked. There's really dismal numbers. But of course, stepping down without an impeachment process not only depends on the president willfully forfeiting his own power, right? But also the veracity of the People Power Party's transition plan itself. And now the history of political parties in South Korea is that they are generally weak compared to the power of the presidency, and they usually form and collapse with the presidency itself. And there are also bitter memories of the last time this happened in 2017, when Park Geun-hye was impeached, and the Conservatives suffered an electoral wipeout. So because of those bitter memories, I really don't envision either the president or the PPP really following this transition plan. They're really going to try and hold on to power for as long as possible and delay the inevitable for as long as possible, especially if an impeachment process isn't carried out.
Doctor, I want to ask you very quickly about the role of the former defense minister, I should say, formally arrested, as we know, on Tuesday. And he also declared that all responsibility for the situation lies solely with him. I'm wondering, what's happening here? I mean, does it feel like Kim Yong-hyun is somehow, somewhere along the way, somehow has he agreed to be the fall guy for this whole martial law mess?
Look, there's no doubt that the defense minister, as well as General Park An-soo, had key roles in instigating the martial law declaration. They also had key roles in the planning of dragging out parliamentary members, dragging out enemies of Yoon, undermining free and independent media, really taking Korea back to its days of military autocracy. So there's no doubt, there's no doubt in my mind that both these figures had a central role in influencing the president and planning out this botched martial law attempt. But of course, the authority to declare the martial law itself rests on the president. And I don't think there's any argument or, any convincing argument that President Yoon or the PPP can make to say that this was purely the actions and the machinations of two individuals. That the buck stops with the president, and it was the president who declared this martial law process. So I think this is going to do little to convince the opposition or the general public that this is enough, and there's going to be much more that comes after this.
Sure. And Doctor, ahead of the impeachment vote on Saturday, the PPP is already seeing an internal division, with some members openly declaring that they support for impeachment after abstaining in the first vote. I mean, do you think the opposition has a realistic chance this week of securing the 2/3 majority needed to impeach Yoon?
Look, although the first impeachment vote didn't pass, and we see internal rumblings and discontent within the ruling party itself, what cannot be ignored, and what we see every day, are the thousands of citizens filling the streets day and night with a desire, with an immense outrage for some sense of justice. And that sense is not declining, but only growing stronger. And so, as bitterly polarized as Korean politics may be, I think there's little appetite on the left or right for the reversion of military autocracy, which Yoon envisioned. But no matter how many protests there are, right, no matter how many internal rumblings there are, it really depends on the ruling party's actions. And for there to be enough people to vote with their conscience. So, as I said, there are bitter memories of the last time this happened, the last time an impeachment process happened. And what the impeachment process is essentially asking, what the opposition is essentially asking to the ruling party, is to willfully relinquish power and to be, no doubt, decimated at the next election.
Okay, so Doctor, if the
So
opposition...
whether there are enough people which...
Please go ahead.
Sure. So whether there will be enough people within the ruling party itself who will vote with their conscience is all a matter of time, and these things really can't be predicted.
Okay. So if the opposition successfully manages to impeach, or force the resignation of President Yoon, what are the chances of them maintaining their political momentum and party leader Lee Jae-myung, who are facing legal pressure, winning that snap election?
I think, no matter the internal problems facing the Democratic opposition and the opposition leader Lee Jae-myung, if there is an election called within the next few months, there's no doubt that the Democratic Party will ride to power. There's no doubt. It's just a matter of how big that majority would be. We already see in the parliamentary elections last year that there was a complete wipeout of the ruling People Power Party. And so there is a desire from the broader populace for political change. And Lee Jae-myung, for all his faults, has an astounding political acumen to take advantage and to really utilize this position to draw a stark contrast between himself and the ruling People Power Party. And I think he's going to use that political momentum all the way to the presidential Blue House if an election is called within the next 6 months.
Okay. We wait and we watch. Dr. Khatouki, thank you very much, meantime, for your time and for your thoughts. Christopher Khatouki, academic and research fellow at the University of New South Wales.